conversation, to simply look at that within ourselves and to make an inner decision, very deep decision to say, it's time to throw off this reactive, fear-based type of conditioning and really go into something else, to choose something else, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the idea of perpetuating wars is simply, well, in your book you explain, and of course most people know by now, that all wars have been perpetuated by a shadow elite that plays both sides. They start the wars and they finish them at their convenience, and whoever dies is just collateral damage. And they make billions and trillions of dollars in the process, and they're, just smug about it. It's just a business deal.
Yes.
So we have to, stop it. And then the governments that we have are simply shell games for the elite to manipulate all of us sheeple. So, it doesn't matter whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or an independent, because there is no two-party system, and besides which, two parties represent duality and polarity, when we know in a higher level of consciousness there is triality and multidimensionality.
Yes. Oh, so, beautifully said, beautifully said.
Oh, thank you. I got carried away there with that little soapbox.
No, it's beautifully said.
Oh, thanks. Well, I'm curious about something. I noticed that I didn't get to the part where you talk about it in your book, if you do, but you had a near-death experience, and I've interviewed quite a few people who have had near-death experiences, because I was so fascinated with, going to the other side and what it's like and the life review. Do you feel at all like talking about that?
Yes, that's fun. I'd love to talk about that.
Oh, good. Wonderful.
Yeah, for me, it was really sort of boring because, most people do get to review their life and go into the light, and I really just blacked out. I think I was so glad, just to be out.
Oh, well, golly.
Oh, my goodness. But,
dear.
It's been a rough incarnation, hasn't it?
Well, I've had one of those, too. I didn't have any of the bells or whistles either.
Oh.
I just went through the black hole and came out through the other side.
Exactly. Yeah, I think I was only gone for about a half a minute, and actually, you connected with me because I did the interview on Conscious Media Network with Regina Meredith, and there was a woman who had watched that as well when it first came out, and we connected immediately on, she emailed me, and we talked on the phone, and we knew each other from a long, long time ago.
Wow.
From this, from before we all came in to do this great experiment on the planet Earth.
Oh, my goodness.
And her first response was, oh, my God, she made it. Because she's just come in, for her first life.
Oh, my goodness.
Straight in from the 10th dimension, and she's never lost a memory of who she is. She's completely clairvoyant, even coming down the birth canal. So, she's here to hold the vibration of the 10th dimension for the ascension. And she immediately, I was in Ashland, Oregon, and she was in Northern California, and she said, I want to come see you. And so she drove up, and she got here on Friday night. And on Saturday morning, we went out to breakfast, and there was an attack that was mounted on me because of all of this energetic work that I've done. As you say, it's a very interesting thing to set your foot on this playing field because you're going up against the big boys. And the big boys have never been too happy about that, and for a while they didn't know, because interestingly enough, you see, they didn't know that the problem would come from the arena of the feminine. Who they took care of that problem back during the Inquisition,
Oh, right, that's right.
So who would think that three women would mount and an attack, so to speak, and take apart the energetic structure of the patriarchy.
It is pretty bold plan.
Yeah, exactly. So, but that's a system they've used for a while, just hide in plain sight. So I got away with it for many years, and then finally the attack that I knew would come sooner or later came, and I was basically pounded out of existence. Oh. And as I sat there, at the table, there was just one wave after another of this kind of violent energy coming at me from all sorts of dimensions, and it was misogynistic, and it was just the violence of the patriarchy and the hatred and the oppression, and it was like being hit with a giant sledgehammer again and again, and about every 10 seconds, and every time I would get hit, my awareness field would completely fracture, and I would have to pull it back together and try to be stalwart.
Oh, geez.
And finally, I called in my lineage, that's a lineage of warriors, and I said, this is way beyond me, and the next pounding came, and it just fractured the lineage. This was huge.
Oh, my God.
So, but it was very fascinating, because the last thought I remember having is, you know what, I just don't think my physical body's going to take this.
Yeah,
and my friend said, you just sort of, slumped over and put your head on the chair and looked for the sunlight, and your eyes were open, and you left the body. And so she came over, and she immediately knew that I had left, and she also immediately knew it was not time, because she knew I was under an occult attack. And she knew it wasn't time for me to leave. And she had also died, and a shaman in South America had pulled her back. So she said once that happened to her, of course, then she intrinsically knew how to do it for other people. As I suppose I do now for other people. But she came back, and she grabbed me, and because she has no form, she is oneness, she is the 10th dimension. She basically wrapped me in oneness so that I could no longer be seen. And she called me. She said, Lucia, get back in your body. And she said there was a hesitation because I was out, and it's been brutal. And so I think I thought to myself, is there any other way? Can I work this from the other side, or can I pass on the torch? And she said, she called me again because she said, no, there's no one else who has this particular coding, right? Not that the coding is special, but just that it's a female warrior who has been programmed, if you will, to take on the patriarchy and to rally women to stand in their power. So she said, you have to come back. And at that point I made a decision to come back. And I think I looked at the situation and said, all right, if I have to come back, what is the most optimal condition to come back as? Because I couldn't come back in duality. I was under attack in duality,
Oh, absolutely.
And I had already been pounded out of existence, so that was no longer an option. Even to come back as enlightenment, which is the complete reconciliation of all polarities within the awareness field, the beautiful yin-yang symbol, that wasn't an option. So I had to come back as oneness. And I came back as the full-blown expression of all 12 dimensions, because that is what I felt would most optimally serve my dharma in the world.
Wow.
And it was it was a complete unknown to me. I was suddenly completely formless. And I had to find a way in which to function, because I could have just sat, for the next year and gone, my God, look at how beautiful everything is.
Wow.
I mean, I was in such an altered state.
Oh, my goodness.
And my good friend, Rama, who has been my teacher in this and other lives, and I talk about him in my book, I give a lot of his spiritual teachings. He came to us that weekend inwardly, and he said, I could construct something for Lucia. He was talking to my friend because she was 10th dimension. He said, if you just let me poke around in your awareness field and figure out this 10th dimensional thing, because it wasn't something that he had access to during his lifetime. He had gone up to the 5th dimension.
Wow.
And he said, I think I could construct a sort of processor, a sort of device that would give you some kind of structure and allow you to function optimally in the world. And he engineered something. He was a very brilliant engineer of consciousness.
Wow.
And it's composed of, it's so beautiful, Lance, when you look at it. It's like this 12-dimensional, multi-dimensional egg. And it came in, around the root chakra at the base of the spine, and it anchored, and then it began to come online, and it's all these circuits, and every single circuit connects to all 12 dimensions, and it came all the way up. It's like a beautiful lattice work of light, all these energetic lines connecting the circuits all the way up above the crown chakra. And as I have sat with it, it took about 5 weeks for it to integrate, but it helps, and I can transfer it. I started transferring it to others, and it can be used for the ascension. It can be used for someone to clear their egoic structure and wake up. For me, it was more of a stabilizer, because I came back formless. But I have programmed it. I use the word processor because it's a computer term. It can be programmed. You can put an operating system, download an operating system to it. And so I programmed it for my Dharma. And about 5 weeks went past, and I said, I was on a retreat. I was really taking a vacation, and I hadn't checked in on this beautiful lattice work. And I was lying there in bed, and I said, I should check on my processor to see what's happening. And lo and behold, I couldn't find it. And I said, what the hell has happened to the processor? And then I took another look, and I suddenly saw it. And it was like this battleship of light.
Whoa.
It was like a platinum, high-tech, high-speed, like the latest high-tech battleship on the seas. Because it had been programmed,
Wow.
And the lattice work was really just a skeleton. It was just a framework. And now all the light circuits had been filled in. And it was a battleship to surf what I call the tsunami of the divine feminine energy that's here, and to move out through the world and help women stand in their power. Now, somebody else would program it in a completely different way, right? For a healer, it would look completely different. Right. Or for an artist, a musician, they would program it to create symphonies. But for me, it became a battleship because that's what I needed.
Well, absolutely. Navigating those fields, I think you better have all the high-tech hardware on there that you can get.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that is an amazing story, my goodness.
Yeah, it feels great. And, it's funny because a lot of people, I recently was out camping in the woods, and there was somebody who came near the campground, but he stood 20 yards back. He wouldn't come near, and I realized after the experience he was feeling that.
Oh yeah.
He just wouldn't come into the aura of that battlefield.
Interesting.
So that was my death experience.
Interesting. Well, now I think people might need to have a little clarification that this is not so much what we're talking about here is not so much a battle of the sexes. It's not a battle between the female and the male energies. We are combined. We have female and male energies within us. That what you're talking about is an ingrained patriarchy which took over. Some say that it was we gave up our power to experience being dominated. But whatever the case, we have been dominated for over 5,000 years by a patriarchal model, which clearly has not served humanity. It brought about wars, disease, hierarchies, ultra wealthy, and suffering. And to me, it seems that the patriarchal model is not aware of as much as the feminine model of the connection to the source, because it doesn't actually have the ability to give birth, even though we come back we incarnate in various incarnations as male and female. But on the whole, it is a more of a destructive energy when it's left in duality to run its own courses.
Yeah, it's such an important point that you raised. Thank you for doing that, because it has nothing to do. You're right. It is the patriarchy that is the problem.